Yes, this may lead us to the second part of our conversation, that is the classification and the assessment system for this population, because on one side you have a lot to learn with the patient about his experience and his meaning making. But on the other side, on the other hand, you need some maps, some classification, some knowledge beforehand. And you just said those days in the seminar that therapists receive in their offices personality disorders and they don't know.
They don't know that.
Yes. And quoting someone, I have some friends with personality disorders and I myself am not feeling well.
Neither do I. Don't worry, I think it is shared.
So I'd like you to share with us what about the DSM classification. And namely the DSM-5, is it improving and is it a helpful instrument or tool? And how much do we need to know on psychopathology or on this kind of cognitive organizations to be able to work with this population?
I think one issue that has always been not shared with my friends and colleagues of more constructivistic orientation it's always been the nosographic stance, because it often happens that if you are constructivist, you tend to consider each human being as unique. So nosography in a way looks like sticking tags to people, but I don't think that is the case. If one terms, not in terms of reification of categories, but in terms of human prototypes, you are more able to think that many patients resemble each other and that some dysfunctional processes may found across different persons. So you use them as heuristics in the very few moments, in the very first moments, of assessment session, in order to see, well, I know that. I always seen other person endorsing those kind of processes and behaving that way. And very often, if that person in this moment is behaving that way and thinking this way, it's very likely that other processes which are usually associated are around, about to appear on the therapeutic scene. So you are able to make forecasts about possible difficulties you will encounter. So as long as you're not crystallizing the patient and confusing the patient with this personality disorder, the person with this personality disorder, I think categories are much helpful, or better prototypes. So great general human type of personality. And as regard DSM-5, this is a very difficult moment, because DSM-4 didn't work for many aspects. Didn't work. Though it had a great advantage that it described the major personality types, be them really reflecting the clinical reality of these presentations or not, but it helped you focus on the fact that some people may be loosely described as narcissistic or avoidant or paranoid or borderline. So you know that, and you are able to see something if you see a patient. If a patient is entered the therapy in a state of emptiness, shutting down, emotionally blanked, distancing, a bit spiteful against the other, a bit condescending toward the therapy, denying the relevance of symptoms, even if he's not or she's not talking about something grandiose in their experience, you know that those are signs of the likely presence of narcissism. And then you can move accordingly and avoid doing something that will probably lead to strains in the therapy alliance. And so in any case, it absolutely was necessary to have a classification system for personality disorder. The DSM-5 now is going again under extensive rewritings. So what was the version, the draft manual, which was available until some weeks ago, is not currently on the website, and probably things will change again. So I think categories will stay, but the contents of those is not available in this moment. What I know today, which may change tomorrow, but I think it's in the final stage, is that the trait classification system will disappear and just be considered for inclusion in the future. As long as I had a look at the new descriptions of the prototypes, of the personality types that were retained in the DSM-5, there is a radical change. For the first time ever, I would dare to think, the descriptions of the single prototypes are something that can convey you the experience of a patient. So for the first time, they are not monological descriptions. You see different facets, and you saw thought processes, affective processes, and interpersonal styles of relating.
So much more rich.
Absolutely. And consistent with the experience of clinician actually treating personality disorders, yes. So maybe a major step forward.
Okay, good. You have a long experience with personality disorders, I could see. And I could see also that the states of mind are so, you have a kind of a radar for states of mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you in a short sentence describe some of the problematic states of mind you more usually meet? For instance, an avoidant, I believe you just, a narcissistic. Or a paranoid state of mind.
Yeah. Well, you know that what is important is that there is not an equation between a specific state of mind and a personality disorder. So the grandiose state is not specific to narcissism. Shame and avoidance is not specific to avoidant personality disorder. Suspiciousness is not specific to paranoia.
Okay.
Because all of them are human aspects of experience we all endorse. We all feel Ibrahimovic or Cristiano Ronaldo, as I told you. We all can be suspicious about other. We all can be ashamed in a social situation which is a bit new to us. What is relevant is that more or less each prototypical personality disorder usually feels a subjective experiences which ranges from a somewhat constricted set of mental states. So the typical narcissist would switch from moments in which feels empty and detached, alone in the ivory tower, to moments in which he's fighting in order for his goal to be met with the idea that others are stupid and inept and weak and will hamper their pursuit of their personal goal, which is often filled with despite and anger, which is core state of narcissism, though is more a frozen anger, unlike the dysregulated anger borderline. And then they may resort, when there is success, when they think that their fantasies can be met, they enter actually in the grandiose states, but this is not the state in which they spend most of the time. But then, if they perceive that they have failed, they can enter in very intense state of depression, numbness, and somewhat pure primitive terror. And you don't want these people entering those states because they are very difficult to treat. In a similar way, people with avoidant personality disorder have somewhat switch from some states in which they feel intense shame with the idea that they will be belittled and ridiculed and considered awkward by other people, so they tend to avoid social contact in this moment. But another core state is really a radical sense that they don't connect with others, that they are different, that they are not able to see that, to understand that in their mind is passing something similar to the mind of the other. So they feel disconnected. It's like a wall is between them and the others. And so they feel like somewhat a sense of alienation. On the other hand, they seek for loneliness in which they can do something they like. So watching movies or listening to music, which is in a way is a self-soothing state, which is rewarding in the short term. But then they look at themselves and they discover that they are alone, and they again judge themselves. Oh, I'm stupid, I am not able to contact women and have friends and have a decent work, and people will discover that. So again, they fall into a state of shame and they seek for a social contact they are not able to achieve. So it's a cycle.
It's a cycle.
Among those states of mind.
So interesting. I've learned from you also that you don't see the personality disorders as categorical or even stable. You somehow see it as a complex dynamic states of mind a long time, according to what is happening in client's life. Could you say something more about this?
Yeah, in a way, when I would prefer the term personality malfunctioning.
Malfunctioning.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for example, if in a specific moment of a life, one patient is swinging between states of shame and states of anger and state of depression and state of grandiosity, well, this is a narcissistic person. But at a certain point, something is break in the perspective to reach some very valued goal. Then the dependent aspect may come to the fore. So the same person, which was narcissistic until yesterday, can be easily diagnosed as having some dependent features.
Yes, interesting.
On the other hand, for example, it's very often that when people with avoidant personality disorder, for whatever the reason, have some success, they become very boastful, arrogant, and have somewhat of a narcissistic presentation.
I see.
Or, for example, always a person with avoidant personality disorder, when exposed too much to the scorn and ridicule of others, pass to the state of shame, to somewhat a state of anger, which is more similar to the presentation of paranoid personality disorder. So you have to see the functioning and the overall movement across different mental states. And in that moment you have a snapshot, and so you can diagnose a specific personality disorder. But 6 months later or 1 year later, you can have a different presentation. So yes, it's constant dynamic movement between self states.
Interesting, yes.